Hi, it's Stephen here for Bland Designs, and today I thought I'd share with you a technique video where I'm going to get out my embossing folders, which I have not used in a donkey's age, and create some cards. Now, I put this all together because this is actually going to be a workshop that I'll be presenting at my local art gallery in a couple of weeks' time, where we're making a variety of artistic cards that can be given to people who do special things at the art gallery, performers who might come in, things like that, as a thank you note from the gallery. So this is what the final product looks like. And I have chosen to put them on a black background on a white card because that way the gallery people can write inside of them whatever they wish to write as a blank note card. But you see here there are 4 panels, and each panel is actually embossed, colored with watercolors, and I'll show you how to do that. And then to highlight the embossing, each panel has had a different color of metallic rub over top of it. So what you're going to need for this is you're going to need a white base card. You'll need a black panel cut down to give about 1/8 of an inch all the way around, and that means I think the dimensions here are 4 by 5 1/4. You're going to need some watercolor paper for this, and this is 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. You could do this with white cardstock as well. I just find that because we're going to be using a lot of water on this, the watercolor paper stands up better because it's meant for that kind of thing. You're going to need some embossing folders of your choice. I picked ones that have a definite background as opposed to a very specific image on them because I think those will look better. But you could use almost anything that you desire. You're going to need, of course, some watercolors. I'm using the Koi watercolors in the travel kit, but you could use any kind of watercolors, it doesn't matter. You're going to need either a water brush or a paintbrush and some water for spreading your color. You're going to need a distress spray bottle of water. It doesn't have to be the distress spray bottle, any spray bottle with water. And you're going to need some metallic rubs, and you can get these at Michael's or at an art supply store, and it's up to you what colors you want to use. I'm using 4 different colors, but it could be just one color. It doesn't matter. So this is what you're going to need, and what I've already done off camera is I've already made my embossing cards, and I simply did those using my Vagabond, but you could use your Cuttlebug, whatever your system is that you do for embossing. So first thing we're going to do is make some space here, and I'm going to show you how to add the watercolor to each of these card bases. So I'm set up here now to add my watercolor to my base cards. The cards have already been embossed, and of course you have 2 sides to an embossed card. You have the embossed side and you have the debossed side. So you want to use the embossed side, where you have more of the raised elements. You could use the other side, they'll give you just a different effect, that's all. But I'm using the side that has the elements raised. Also, I have cut these cards down to 3.5 inches by 5 inches as well. I did that before I put them in the embossing folder, and then I embossed them. Once these are cut down into 4 rectangles, they'll fit nicely onto the black panel piece. I've got my water bottle here, and I like to give my watercolors a little mist of water to get them activated. I also have a baby wipe here on the side because I've decided to use a water brush. Now, if you were using just an ordinary paintbrush with a bucket of water, you wouldn't necessarily need the baby wipe. I also have off to the side a paper towel. This is for blotting, as you'll see. So to begin with, oh, and why do I have the baby wipe? This is just to clean off any color that may be on my water brush. You just brush it back and forth. I think I've got enough water in here. I do. And you can see there was some residue color into this. This is just to keep my colors from being contaminated in the pan. If you were using a paintbrush and a bucket of water, you would just dip it in between colors and that would clean it off fine. So you just pick whatever color you want to use. And you're just going to, oops, I forgot one thing first. Mist your card with a little water so that your colors will run. And you're not being too particular about where the color's going. And see, now I'm going to switch colors, so I'm just cleaning off my water brush, picking up some more color. I'm not blending the colors on the actual embossed card at this point. I'm just laying down color. The reason is that in a few minutes I'm going to spray this with a little water and let the colors run together. But if I did that now, I might get more mud, depending on the colors I've chosen to use. And my palette here is fairly limited because this is a very small tray of color. So I'm just getting it onto the card. And that's probably enough. Just clean off my brush here. And now I'm just going to take my water gun, or my water bottle, and just lightly mist and get the colors to run. And I'm just letting them blend a little bit together. I'm not that concerned if I have some white spots. In fact, some negative space is good. Now, as you do this, you will find that your colors, like down here, will start to pool. So just gently blot them with an absorbent paper towel. You could take your paper towel and blot the whole thing, but you're going to get more muted colors if you do that. And now I'm going to take my heat gun and I'm just going to dry this. Now your card is going to curl a little bit. You already see that it's curling up here, but as you dry it, it will flatten out. So this shouldn't give you too much of a problem. And it doesn't take all that long to dry, so I'm not going to cut off the video while I'm doing this. I'm letting you see the whole process as I do it. And you can see now the card is starting to flatten itself out. And that's how you know that it's becoming dry. If you see some more pooling, just take your paper towel and just sop that up. And now you see that my card is starting to curl the other way. So just to get a tongue curl, flip it over and start drawing on the back side, and it will flatten out. And you just keep doing this process. It's not going to be perfectly flat, but I'll show you a trick to get it flatter in a few minutes. Okay, that's dry enough for now. Now we're just going to set that aside. You can bend it a little bit to flatten it out a little bit more. And we're going to take another card. This one has a different embossed design. And we're basically going to do the same thing. Make sure I get it wet. And we're just going to throw down some color. I'm not really thinking too much about my colors here. I'll clean this off a little bit. I'm going to add a little blue because I know the blue is going to turn this to green in spots, and that's okay by me. And we've got just a little more up in here. Clean off my brush. And I'm just squeezing a little bit of the water through the brush as I do this to get the bulk of the color out. Wet this again, and let's let it run. Okay, so I'm just going to blot lightly in some of these areas where water has pooled. And we're going to dry this again. So I'm going to do the same procedure with the other two embossed cards I have over here. And once I have them all dry and all colorized, I'll come back and show you the next step. So I have my embossed cards all colorized right now, but I want to add a little bit of an accent to the raised areas and a little bit of shimmer. So I've got out some metallic rubs, and these can be bought at art supply stores or at Michael's as well. In fact, their own make is Craft Smart, and they come in a variety of colors. And the colors I have a silver, I have a rose gold, I have a gold, and I have a copper or bronze. I guess it's bronze. And this is a totally different company, Artsy. And these are Craft Smart, and this is Deco Art. So it doesn't matter, whatever you've got, you can use. So I'm just going to take my first card, and I'm just going to pick one of the rubs. And to use a rub, they're like a paste. Put your finger in and just get a little bit on your finger, and then just lightly rub over your card. Now you don't have to do the entire card, up to you. And you might want to have a dry paper towel or cloth nearby so that you can just buff the color. That'll bring up a little bit of the shine when you do that. And then just set that aside. Now I'm going to try a little different color. Wipe off my finger a little bit. You will have gold finger or whatever color by the time you're done with this, but it washes off. This is the silver. And again, I'm not pressing too hard because I don't really want the color. I only want the color to show up on the raised areas, not the flattened background part. Just gives it a nice bit of shimmer. Again, buff. Grab another one, and let's grab a different color. You could do them all the same color. It doesn't really matter. Now this is my gold. My gold is pretty dried out, so I'm trying to get the heat of my finger to get this activated, so I'm rubbing it pretty hard. And this one may not show up as much. I think I need a little fresher pot. But for the sake of this tutorial, this will work fine. Okay, give that a buff. And my last one, we're going to use the bronze. This particular brand, it is very, very soft. Now, if you didn't want to use watercolor on these cards, you could simply use some of your colored sprays as well. And they'll give you the same effect in terms of adding color to the embossed cards. Okay, that's enough of that. And depending on what embossing folder you've used, you might find when you use the rub, you may get some in the background, as I did here, but that's not going to bother me. So there we have, all four of the panels are now done. Now, I mentioned that if you find that they're warping, these aren't too bad, but if they're warping a little bit too much for your pleasure, then you can just take them and gently bend them. Or what you can also do is run them back through your Vagabond or your Cricut Cuttlebug, whatever you're using as your die cutting machine, without the embossing folder, just between two of the plates, and that will flatten them out a little bit as well. So I think I'm pretty good with this. So the next stage is to cut these down into the rectangles that I'm going to use on my card face. Okay, so now I'm going to cut them down into 4 pieces each approximately the same width. I say approximately because it could be slightly out depending on your cutter. But these cards are 3.5 by 5, so I want 4 pieces, so I'm going to cut it first this way in half. At 1.75 or 1 3/4 inches, and then cut each of those strips down to 2.5 inches. So my first one, line it up on my little cutter here to 1.75, cut it, and then just put the 2 pieces together and cut those down to 2.5. And there we have our 4 pieces. Put those aside. We'll do another one. I'll show you this again. So cut it down to 1.75 this way. Put the 2 pieces together. And cut those at 2.5. Now the reason why these might not quite line up, like if you look at this, they're a little bit off, is simply because these pieces of card are not completely square, and that's not unusual. All paper cutters work differently. No paper cutter will give you a perfectly square sheet of paper when you cut it. It's just the nature of the beast. I'm not going to let that worry me. As you'll see later when I mount these onto the card face, if I find that one piece or something is a little bit off kilter, I can just take my scissors and trim a little bit off the edge, and that'll work. So I'm going to cut these other 2 pieces down and then show you how to assemble the card. So I have my 4 embossed cards cut down into 4 pieces each, and I have them laid out here. So basically you're going to use 1 piece from each of these piles and arrange them onto the black panel. Now again, this could be any color that you want, but I've chosen a black panel because I'm using a white card base. And you can get out of this then, obviously, 4 cards. So I'm just going to take 1 from each pile. And I've put down a piece of deli paper. It could be just a piece of scratch paper, copy paper, newsprint, whatever you have, just for the sake of the gluing. And I am using a glue stick for this. Now you can use whatever glue you like. I'm using a glue stick simply for the fact that during my workshop, that's what everybody will be using. You could use double-sided tape. You could use a wet glue. You do want, though, a glue that will give you a little bit of wiggle room. If you use the tape, you want to make sure you're very accurate as to your placement. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to move it again. So the glue stick gives me a little bit of wiggle room. So I pick one of my cards, turn it over, and the reason I've got the deli paper down here is because I am really sticking this down, because this is watercolor paper, and it's 140 pounds, so it's a very stiff paper. So you want to make sure you have glue all the way to the edges. And then you're just going to take this first piece and line it up so there's about 1/8 of an inch at the top of the black and about 1/8 of an inch, roughly, to the left side. And this will help you place your other pieces as well. We're just eyeballing it. You may want to have a cloth or a paper towel close by so you can, oh, maybe that wasn't a good idea, but no one will notice that. I didn't have a clean one. I should have had a clean one. Let me get one. Because some of my rub came off onto my card, and well, it's now an extra embellishment, but you get the idea. I'm going to grab another one. Doesn't matter what order you put these in. This is all up to you. And the beauty too is when you're making 4 of these cards, using up all the pieces, you can alter the placement of each of these smaller pieces, and you have 4 very different cards, but all using the same technique. And I am leaving a gap. You don't have to. You could actually butt them up to each other, although you want to make sure your cuts are very, very straight for that. And that's why I'm not doing it, because I know my cuts aren't that straight. And so this way, I don't have to worry about getting them perfectly straight. And you know, if they're a little off, that really doesn't bother me, because that just suggests that these are handmade. And handmade is fine. Each card then will have its own unique personality, its own unique character, and people will know that you've done something very artistic with these. Now you could extend this idea to backgrounds for your art journal, scrapbooking, things like that. Okay, so I've got everything glued down well on this card. Again, if you find that your card is warping a little bit, you could run it through your die cutting machine without any dies or embossing folders, just the flat plates, and that will flatten it out. One of my favorite tricks to use, and if you've watched my videos before, you'll know I love to put them through my heat laminator. I run them through a couple of times between in a carrier, a protective carrier, and it flattens things out really nice. So there, I've got my card face done. Now all I have to do is mount it onto my card base. Same thing, I'm going to use the glue stick here. Again, if you want to use double-sided tape or a different kind of glue, you're more than you can do that. It's not a problem. I am being generous with my glue because of the heft of this, so I don't want it falling off. And I've cut the black card panel down so that I get about 1/8 of an inch or so of a border all the way around. And there we have it. Our card is all done. And I can make 3 more of these, and although they're using the same panels, I put them in a little different arrangement, and it looks totally different. Very artistic, very fast to do, and yeah. So I hope you like this technique. I hope the people when I give the workshop are going to like this, and I'll see you for the next tutorial. Bye bye for now.